Hello everybody, Alex here bringing you another knife video. As you can see, this is a GTC in front of you. I'm going to start off with some of the packaging and things it came with. First off, Gus included this Velcro patch, handmade GTC custom knives. I think we got a little sticker here, got bent in the packaging a little bit. And I also want to show you his branded cases. So you can see on here, GTC tag. Nice case. It's got this kind of brown liner, which is different. And here's the certificate of authenticity. Handmade GTC custom knives. You pause this and read it if you want. One thing I wanted to quickly talk about is that I like it when makers include certificates of authenticity. Not every maker does, but the reason I actually like it is because it frequently tells you about like the blade material, the handle material. You can see titanium, G10, carbon fiber, and you can also see the birth date, which I actually like having these, less because I'm concerned about the knife being non-authentic, and more so because I like seeing the composition of like the blade material and maybe the scales or something that you're not aware of. Maybe you don't know if it's Mokutai or Damascus or something. And I actually like being able to just look at the certificate of authenticity to make the determination on what it is. Gus also sends a hat with the GTC logo on it. It's kind of a camo hat with orange trim. Let's get into the knife. So this is a reduced Airborne. Gus Cecchini, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He certainly was made known to me with his Airborne model in the 2016-ish time frame. And its claim to fame is the spring-loaded tab, which is basically a flipper tab that folds down when it's not in use. And I think one of the most interesting things about this design is that it's pretty angular. You can see it has a lot of straight lines here. And having a flipper tab would certainly interrupt some of the design language on this particular knife. And the spring-loaded tab was definitely a creative way to get by that. So just for some comparison, this is my Jeremy Marsh Rockstar, and you can kind of see how the flipper tab typically sticks up. You would certainly see a change in how this knife would look if you had a flipper tab sticking out of it. So it's cool that Gus came up with a different way to hide the flipper tab while still making it functionally useful. Rumor has it that Gus got his SLT design, he got his inspiration from another maker named Lee Williams when they worked together in a shop just doing some collaboration or something like that. I do have a Lee Williams knife. This is the Kickstop Adventurer Tonto, and Lee's invention basically makes the flipper tab when it's open like a normal flipper tab, and then, when the blade is closed, it's like a normal flipper tab. And then when the blade is open, there's no flipper tab. So you can see how the knife is a pretty clean design. And on this particular design, the flipper tab basically acts as the stop, and it essentially stays in the same place. It pivots, but it stays in that location. So basically what happens is as the blade opens, the flipper tab stops here, and then the blade connects right here. Yep, so this is kind of how this one works. The GTC SLT is a little bit different in that the flipper tab actually comes all the way with the blade. So you can kind of see, you can still actually grab it right here. It doesn't work in the same way that the SLT does. It has its stop pins. I believe they're internal. You can see the, you might be able to see the track right there. And so, yeah, the mechanism is a little bit different, but it's a similar idea where the blade, the flipper tab is hidden when the knife is open. And on the GTC, it's also fairly hidden when it's closed, although you do see just a little bit of it there. So I'm going to put the Lee Williams away for a second, but we may get it back out for comparisons. But I'm going to take you on a walk around and maybe talk about some of the interesting features or things that I really like about this. So getting you first up, we'll start at the front here. You can see GTC's pivot design. He has a pretty iconic pivot design. He's been making knives with pivots like this for a while now, and it's kind of this flathead custom design with like one main center stripe with two kind of accent stripes, and it's an attractive look. On this particular design, I asked for kind of a orange and black theme to it, kind of wanted something that was like fall, Halloween-y kind of colors, just because it's not something that I've had before. And he asked me if I was sure about Orange G10, and I was like, yeah, I think it could be fun. And I gotta say that Gus did a pretty good job getting this one to look just right. It's got a pretty simple, minimalistic design, but it's still interesting to look at. And I also asked for something that was fairly user-friendly. And I think that this finish, he's kind of got a stone wash on the flats here. Maybe a slight orange peel on the bevels. Orange peel on the sides there. And then he's got this interesting milled pattern right here. You can see his GTC signature right there. He's got this interesting milled pattern. As far as grippiness goes, it's, it's just like other smooth titanium. It's not like, because it's stone washed, it's not like it's mirror polished. And I also like that it doesn't pick up fingerprints. I'm a big fan of that. It's pretty user-friendly, so as you start to carry it, if you get any scuffs on it, they'll be hidden a little bit better. But it's not like some crazy milling where, your hands are going to be wet and you're going to be, chopping through the rainforest with your GTC knife. It's probably not quite that grippy, but it's great for opening packages and stuff. Continuing around here, we have a floating back spacer. As you can kind of see my hand back there. And you've got some knurling on the back. Very nice, very usable. You can kind of see there's like these like bronze standoffs in there that give it its floating nature. It's an attractive look. Continuing around here, you have a nice pocket clip. Hidden hardware on that pocket clip, which I'm a big fan of. I like it when the hardware is hidden versus when it's showing, which I have on some of my other knives. And he also makes his own hardware, so you can kind of see his hardware right there, where the lanyard hole also is centered between those. And you can also see that the hardware is not showing on this side, so I guess the head of the screw starts here, and then you screw it into the frame over there. One other interesting thing is that the inlays must be epoxied or glued in. It's probably kind of tough to see, but you can't see any hardware in there or any like hardware heads. Whereas on some knives, like maybe this Dalibor Bergam Oberon, you can see the hardware heads. You can see them right there and right there. So yeah, I would say it's definitely maybe some kind of epoxy or glue or something that keeps those guys in there. They're pretty flush. You don't notice a lot of differences in how it's raised. And he also did really nice with the centering and design of those. Quite symmetrical. It looks good. It's a very attractive design. The next thing I kind of wanted to talk about is the lock bar. When I first purchased this and posted it on Instagram, one of the comments on it was that somebody really liked the lock bar, and I have to agree with that because like it's not something so simple where the lock bar just engages the blade in its normal position, kind of right on the edge where you can see it. Because you've got the SLT flipper here. Again, we'll see if we can grab that so you can see it. There you go. You can see that. The lock bar doesn't engage right here. It actually engages back a little bit further. And basically what he's done is he's basically just cut out this raised section. He's got really nice millwork in there so that you can still kind of have your hand where you would expect it, as well as it's got all of its functionality, and it also interfaces with the SLT pretty seamlessly. Another kind of clever thing is that the lock bar kind of like index point interfaces with the frame here in this cutout, and it acts as a lock bar like over travel prevention. Whereas like some knives like this Dalibor uses the scale in this bolster lock example. And some knives, like this Jeremy Marsh, has nothing on that lock bar, so you can just kind of bend it over as far as you want. And I've never like ran into an issue where my lock bar was overextended and it messed up the action. I'm not that hard on my knives, so that's never happened to me. but I kind of like the idea of having something that prevents you from doing it, or maybe you hand your knife to somebody else and they don't know any better and they really bend it over. But yeah, you can't do that on the GTC, which I'm a big fan of. Getting into his blade, he's got this pretty high polish satin. You can kind of see the reflections going on there. And he's got this two angles. They're pretty flat edges, and I guess we got a hollow grind here and maybe a hollow or flat grind here, as well as this top wedge. This is the reduced Airborne, so this Airborne blade style is probably one of the ones that made him famous, to me at least. I know he was making knives before that. I think he started in the late 90s or maybe early 2000s. And he quickly graduated to making award-winning knives and award-winning designs. But I wasn't collecting knives at that time. I probably didn't start collecting around until the 2014 timeframe. And then this one really put him on the map for me. And this blade style is very GTC knives. In fact, I don't think you can look at a GTC knife and not recognize it, because most of his designs, I think, have a design style that is just very recognizable. And yeah, the Airborne to me really spoke. So the Airborne reduced is, I think, an inch less blade. I think it's a 4-inch blade if it's the normal size, or it's 3 inches if it's the reduced size. And likewise, the handle here is also reduced. You can see, like I said, pretty high finish satin on there. Satins don't tend to be my go-to, or super high polished satins don't tend to be my go-to because they don't hide wear very well. And I'm sure that as soon as I start using this more, it'll get marks on it, and that's okay. As far as usability goes, the idea behind this blade shape does have some utility purposes to it, where you've got kind of 2 points to make cuts on things. You've got this one, so you can kind of have a point there as you're making cuts. You can use this one, or you can use that tip to do kind of work as you're cutting. I find that this one's actually kind of hard to use, but this one is very easily used. And having 2 flats on there, also pretty easy to open packages and cut tape and stuff. So it is a pretty usable blade. It's pretty beefy too. Like, it's a pretty stout blade. It's got pretty thick blade stock. Kind of continuing around, you can see pretty high finish work on this too. Sorry, you're gonna have to deal with my fingerprints. But yeah, it's a pretty usable blade, and I haven't used it a whole lot, but I certainly am looking forward to it. One thing, it's probably going to be tougher to see. He does have his maker's mark in there, his name, reduced Airborne, the model, the blade steel, and he's got 2024 when he made that. It's signed on the inside of the backspacer there. The action on this thing is really nice. I had been looking at YouTube videos of GTC knives for a while, and I commented on one of his Instagram posts for a cowboy model, and I asked, mostly jokingly, like, hey, how do I get one of these? And he just reached out with a message and said, hey, do you want me to put you on the books for one of my models? And I said, yes. And I don't know, 6-8 months later or something, he reached back out and said, hey, I'm ready to start your knife if you're good to go. It'll be like 1 to 2 months. And I said, yep. And he said, okay, what do you want? What are the materials you want? And then, yeah, we started the build. But coming back to the action on that, in the time between when I first commented on his Instagram post and when I got the knife in my hands, I watched a ton of YouTube videos. And the YouTube videos, I had never seen somebody who was not happy with the action on their GTC knives, but from 1 or 2 YouTubers, I guess the action on early ones maybe had a softer detent, and it could be opened or not. You could deploy the blade, but not get it to open all the way. I asked Gus specifically for a slightly harder detent because I am pretty avid about my flippers always flipping open, and there basically being no way to actuate the flipper and not open the knife. That's kind of like one of the biggest things about custom knives to me, is that it's got to have that functionality. And Gus nailed it. This action is to die for. He makes his own GTC bearings, and the detent on this thing is just perfect. It's so easy to use. The action on it sounds great. It's super functional. There's a 0% chance that you hit this flipper tab and you do not get this knife to deploy. and I am very happy with that. I'd also seen some videos where maybe the blade had a little bit of play in its closed position. This one is perfect, which is what I would expect. So yeah, the action on this thing, the fit and finish on this thing is great. The style is very impressive to me. I love this inlays. They're simple, they're clean. I dig that. I like the shape of this knife a lot. One other thing is that even in the closed position, I feel like the shape fits perfectly into its handle, and it looks just as good close as it does open. The way he carries the blade all the way through. You can see there how his the blade lines perfectly up with his handles where that line kind of goes across. And you are not going to grab the tip of that unless you like really dig your finger in there, so you're not going to cut yourself or anything like that. And I haven't had any issues with that going in and out of my pocket. I'm going to get these off the table just so we're focused on the GTC. And so yeah, I think that if you have the opportunity to get a GTC knife from him, I would recommend something with his SLT because it's a really cool mechanism. As you can see, it's got this jimping right there so that your finger doesn't slide, and it's kind of a small tab, so you probably want that. But yeah, if you have the chance to get something, I would recommend something with the SLT. For me, I've kind of have a range of knives that I have. I have some knives that are pretty big, like the Dalibor you saw earlier, and I have some knives that are a little bit smaller. Think maybe like Microtech UTX 70, or I have a Jason Clark Mini Hunter. So I've kind of got a range of knives, and this one, it's kind of tall, so it fits in the hand pretty well, but it's pretty short, so that it's a pretty manageable blade in terms of doing tasks. In the hand, it feels pretty good. It doesn't have like a choil or anything to keep your hand from like getting closer to the blade. This is not really a super hard use knife to me, so I don't think that's necessary, but I guess there's some risk to that sliding up and maybe cutting yourself. It does have a bit of a flat spot on the blade there, so you do have a little bit of give, but too much farther and you're definitely going to be hurting. It's got this interesting like 2 angles, and as your hand falls in there, I don't notice any hot spots or anything like that. I don't notice any hot spots on the clip. It sits in your hand really well. I have like medium, large-ish hands depending on what kind of glove brand you'd be looking at. So pretty average hands, maybe slightly larger than average. In the reverse grip, just as comfortable. Nothing going on there. I suppose you could use the ends as a glass breaker, maybe if you really, really had to, but it's titanium and you'd bang up the knife pretty bad, so, wouldn't do that for fun, but in a pinch, it's certainly got the angle to be kind of a impact point because it's pretty pointy there. So yeah, it's pretty tall in terms of this dimension, but it's also not too thick, so it for its size, it fits really well in the hand. All that being said, that it fits really well in the hand, and it's very usable, in my opinion. So I'll probably make another video on the GTC SLT versus the Lee Williams kickstop, but I just kind of wanted to put this out here, at least while the blade was still in near perfect condition, because as I start to use this, it might get slightly less photogenic, but I did just want to put this video out here and kind of share my initial thoughts on it. Overall, I'm really happy with it. The action's top-notch, fit and finishing is great, style is to die for, and Gus is really pleasant to work with. For those of you who don't know, he's out of Brazil, and when you get his knives, they have to go through customs and stuff, which is maybe a little bit more difficult than some of the other knives where you buy them from people in the United States. But all said and done, Gus was really easy to work with. I think Brazil's majority language spoken is Portuguese, and Gus's English is great. There's no communication barrier at all, which is nice. There's a lot of talented makers out there from countries other than the United States of America, and I could see the language barrier potentially being a challenge, but that's not the case for Gus. Shipping for me from Brazil took 13-ish days to the Seattle area. So not too bad there. Gus is, like I said, really pleasant to work with, and he delivers on when he says he's gonna make your knife, and that's when he makes your knife. So I also like that a lot. Just one other thing is that you can see he also carried the texture onto this side under the clip. This knife goes in and out of the pocket pretty easily. You can see his 3D milled clip kind of sits, it's got the normal tension there. It goes in and out of most pockets pretty easily. Maybe if you have really, really thick pockets, it might be difficult, but it doesn't have any like super big ridge or lock bar cutout to tension it. It does have it. It's just like the way this lock bar is inset. As your pocket goes underneath the clip, it just kind of goes right through and doesn't present any snags or anything. So usability there is also pretty nice. So yeah, I'm gonna give you one more quick look around, and then we will quit while we're still ahead.